Today we're back at it, part 2, 6-liter cylinder head gasket adventure on the shop truck. And hopefully today we're going to have the motor out and get it on a stand, maybe start the teardown. All right, so for those of you that are just joining us, this is part 2 of hopefully not too many parts, but we're pulling the motor out of the shop truck and doing a fresh set of O-ring cylinder heads from Powerstroke Products, studs, gaskets, all the fixings, and we decided to pull the motor out of the truck because, well, we don't have a lift, take the cab off, and there's a few other things I got to do, clutch, and then so on and so forth. So either way, transmission's got to come out, and we just decided this is the best course of action for us. If you want to see part 1, I'm going to put it up in the top corner here. You can click on this, or I'll also put it in the description of the video. You can click on the link there and kind of see how we got to this point. And next steps is basically just starting to pull everything off that connects the motor to the truck. I'm going to go through, like the first video, we're going to do some time-lapse stuff, but basically all the wiring that connects over to the engine, I'll show you. There's some grounds, there's some stuff that bolts to the side, and I like to pull the majority of the stuff off the top of the engine. Some people will try to jack the cab up a little bit, get some room, try to pull it off with all this stuff on. To be honest, once you have the front end off this truck like this, it is pretty easy to just kind of, just like I am here, standing here, pull all this stuff off. It's going to make your life a lot easier. This motor comes out pretty easy, so hopefully by the end of this video we'll have the motor out, motor on a stand, and start the teardown. Alright, so I've been trying to utilize GoPro a little bit more, and it's been making my life a little easier. Try to get some of this content out a little bit faster for you because, to be perfectly honest, this whole camera setup is awesome, but when you try and do this quick time-lapse stuff and really get in here and give you guys the details, that thing is a lot of work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set you guys up on a little tripod here, and I'm just going to start picking away with some time-lapse stuff. But basically, I got to pull all this IPR stuff off of here, these connections here, pull this out. If you don't have that, obviously that's one less step you got to do, but basically start by disconnecting, take the degas bottle out, all these hoses. There's going to be a wiring harness that goes over to the PCM. I like to take the battery tray out because you get this little air box holder right here that kind of gets in your way. So we're going to take all that out and then just start really paying attention to what goes from the body or the chassis to the motor. So you're going to see, like I said, the harness. You got some fuel lines in here, your power steering lines. I'm going to leave the power steering pump right on the motor. I'm going to leave the AC compressor right on the motor. If you did leave your AC connected and you just swung it out of the way, you're obviously going to want to just unbolt that and drop it down. You can leave that right in the truck. I got to do some power steering lines anyway, so we're going to be draining the power steering system, so we can just disconnect that and start to get everything on the front disconnected. Over here, you have the power wire that goes to the battery cable, comes up right here, and then you have your heater core lines here, and you got the line for the map sensor. So we'll start pulling all that off. I'm going to rip the alternator off, intake elbow, all that stuff, and we'll just keep rolling. So a little trick some of you may not know, and it's really easy to show you while we have the motor like this, is these belt tensioners have this little tab. So if you're doing anything like an alternator or anything like that, instead of trying to keep a tool on the tensioner and take the belt off, what you can actually do, especially say for instance you are doing the alternator, you can pull on the belt right here and the tensioner will go down, and you can just push this little tab in and click it into place, and that'll save you a lot of headaches, because what happens is the tension stays off of it. you can do everything you need to do and then get the belt back on. And then once you get the belt back on, you can just give it a little yank and pop. That thing will just pop right back out of its way on its own. Boom, just like that. So real quick, I'm going to give you a do as I say, not as I do kind of moment here. So I have pretty terrible ADD sometimes, and I jump around. I mean, I've done enough of these trucks where I know everything needs to be disconnected, and sometimes I get bored in one spot, go to another spot. Don't do that. What I suggest you do is try your best to start on one side, disconnect everything you possibly can. As you can see, I kind of did some stuff over here, PCM, wiring harness flipped over. Then I went to here, then I kind of went to over there. Not a good idea. And like I said, that is a do as I say, not as I do type of thing. It's a bad habit I have, and I'm hoping to point you guys in the right direction so you don't do the same thing, because if you don't know what you're looking for, if you've never done this before, there's a good chance that you miss on something, and then you go to pull the motor out and it's hung up, and that's not fun. So focus, stay on one side, keep disconnecting everything on one side until it's off. We don't have much left here. We've got power steering lines, these two here. We have 2 fuel lines, and then I'm gonna pop this radiator hose to get it out of the way. And then this coolant line here, I like to take it off here and here and just get this piece right out of the way. And then you can tuck this is the other side of the heater hose, you can tuck this up over behind the master cylinder and get it out of your way. Then on this side, we don't have much left. We have this one heater hose, map sensor hose, and that power wire I was talking about. And then we'll go down here, and we got a bracket for the starter wire. It's this big positive cable that comes here. There's a bracket here, and then behind that bracket is a ground. So you just want to make sure you get all that stuff. We're gonna be doing some new tranny lines there, but make sure you get all that stuff off. Once we do, then go back to pulling the intake manifold off, pulling all the stuff off the top, and then transmission time. Alright, so we got everything on this side disconnected, everything on this side disconnected, kind of like tucked up out of the way. Intake manifold off. Now some of this stuff you don't have to take off. You don't have to take the intake manifold off, but it's got to come off to do the head gaskets and the heads anyway, so I mean it's no different doing it now. Gives you a little more room, a little easy to get your engine crane in here and stuff like that. The only other thing I am going to take out is the up pipes. I prefer to have as much room as possible so I can come up with the engine and not have all this stuff hitting the firewall and everything like that. So I'm going to do that from underneath, and we're at the point now where we got to go up anyway. So one thing you don't want to forget about, there is a ground right here that comes up from the back of the cylinder head and it goes right to the firewall. You don't want to forget about that because it'll break and hang you up and give you a hard time. The other thing too that you're going to see once you get underneath that's a little tricky to get to is where the transmission lines bolt to the side of the motor. It is almost impossible to see, and a lot of times what I found is it's easier to disconnect once you have the motor lifted up a little bit. I'm replacing these lines, so I'm just gonna cut, and I'm gonna cut on the other side, don't do that if you're not replacing the lines. But these lines are pretty crusty. That bolt's a little bit hard to get to with the motor in, so I'm just gonna cut them. But let's get this thing up on jack stands and start pulling the tranny out, start getting the up pipes out from underneath, and go from there. All right, so I got a 6-speed here, manual, so a little different than if you have an automatic, but basically we're gonna pull the drive shaft, and up top you gotta do the, you gotta take the shifter out, which isn't that bad. You take the little boot off the console, and there's 4 bolts, and the whole shifter tower comes right out of it. And then we're gonna pull the starter, tranny lines, and then over on this side, you got the clutch slave cylinder, which just twists and then pops right out. Transmission cross member. So basically, put your tranny jack onto the tranny, undo the 2 bolts that hold the tranny mount to the cross member, lift that up a little bit, and then you can take this whole cross member right out. And then once the cross member's out, you just slowly lower it down a little bit, couple of connectors, and undo the bell housing bolts. You can leave the transmissions in the truck if you really want. I find with a manual transmission though, it's a little bit more difficult because you have the input shaft that slides into the clutch, and you know, that'll make it a little bit difficult to get the motor farther enough forward, especially with the oil pan being in the way. It'll make it a little bit difficult to get the motor out. So I prefer to pull the transmission. Obviously, if you had an automatic here, what you'd want to do is undo the torque converter nuts before you undo the bell housing. And obviously, if you have a 4-wheel drive, deal with that whole transfer case mess. But we'll get the transmission out of this thing, and then once the tranny's out, it'll give me a little more room to mess with the up pipes, get my arm up in there. You can do that whenever you want. It's just the order I want to do it in. And then all we have left after that is motor mount nuts, lift the motor up and out. Now that we get this thing out, it's time to get it on a stand. And what I like to do is take the rear cover off. You don't have to do it, but I really don't like using bolts that long to go all the way through the entire rear cover. So what I do is I just pop this rear cover off. We're gonna do a rear main seal anyway. It's only one other gasket in behind there that you gotta replace, and you know, it kind of makes things a little safer. It's a heavy motor on a stand, so the shorter the bolts you can use, the better off it is. So let's pop this rear cover off and then we'll get it up on a stand. Well, we got the motor out and on a stand. I was hoping I'd get into some teardown tonight, but I'll be honest with you, it was hot. I'm pooped. I'm ready to call it a night. But I guess that just means that we'll be able to focus a little bit more on the teardown video, and I think, you know, that's really the important stuff. I know I kind of glossed over some of this engine removal, and if you guys have any questions and you're not sure about something, you're trying to do this process and the video didn't really help you much, feel free to reach out, comment, and ask questions. My email is always in the comment section, in the description of the video, so if you do have any questions, feel free to email me and I can do my best to guide you through. But what I really want to do is show you guys the real nitty-gritty stuff, the head gasket stuff, what I like to do, how I like to clean the block, and you know, that's really what I was excited to show you. So hopefully you didn't get disappointed by missing out on some of the details of pulling the engine on this, and you know, we'll just keep grinding. But thanks for tuning in, guys. This is part 2, and hopefully we'll get this finished up in 2 more parts. We'll do an engine tear down and assembly, and I don't know, maybe 3 parts install. We'll see, but we got a big pile of goodies, a bunch of stuff from Blessed Performance. We're gonna be trying out a set of head studs that a lot of you guys might not have tried out, and see how that works out for us. And I'm just excited. I'm excited to get the truck back together, and I'm excited to hear from you guys. So drop a comment below, and we'll see you soon.